we are in section 4.3. We're going to start talking about congruent triangles. Okay, so here's how triangles are congruent. Okay, so we can look at the words here, is that two polygons are congruent if and only if their corresponding parts are congruent. Right, so we have corresponding angles. If I look at angle A right here, we'll use a different color. So here's angle A. Angle A, you'll notice, has two congruent marks that is congruent to angle H. They're not always in the same place if the triangles are maybe spun around. If we're looking at angle B is congruent to angle J. They each have one mark. So on and so forth. Corresponding sides. Let's take a look at the sides. I'm going to highlight a side here. I'm going to highlight this side that has one tick mark. We would call that side AB. Then I would go over here, and that would have one tick mark. So those are both congruent. So on and so forth. If I do BC, BC is congruent to JK. I have to do B first, because B has one and J has one. So we start with B and J. And then lastly, what we're going to practice in a second, the right order. If I start out with ABC, I know that A goes with H, J goes with B, and K goes with C. So I have to put it in that order. And what I like to do, which we'll talk about on the next slide too, is I like to put them on top of each other like that. So I know that A and H go together, B and J go together, C and K go together. So right here, we're going to write down all the corresponding parts that are congruent. And then we're going to write a congruent statement. So we're going to start out with angles. If I look up here, A has one and W has one. So angle A is congruent to angle W. Then I'm going to look for the 2. B has 2. X has 2. So angle B is congruent to angle X. And I'm going to keep doing that pattern. I'm going to find that C has 3 and Z has 3, which leaves D congruent to angle Y. Okay, now I have sides. And the sides are easy to match up because I'm just going to go in the order of the angles. So if we start out with AB, which I will highlight, AB will be congruent to WX. And really, it's the same order that I have over here. So side AB is congruent to side WX. And then I'm going to go to BC is congruent to, I'm going to match them up here. So B and C go with X and Z. Okay, so BC goes with, oh, I made a big mistake here. I got to go back over here and change these. This is Y and this is Z. So it's going to be XY. Sometimes it's hard to see the 3 and the 4. Okay, so Y actually has 3. Z has 4. And then I'm going to go to side CD. Here's CD, 3 to 4. And that goes with YZ. And then last but not least, we will call the last side DA. is congruent to ZW, and I'll show you on the picture. So DA is the 3 marks on the side, 3 marks on the side, ZW, and it starts with the angle that has 4 marked. So that's how they match up. And now I can just look at my angles and I can write a congruent statement for the whole thing. I'm going to say that ABCD is congruent to WXYZ. Alright, let's try another one. Okay, now I'm using numbers. Okay, so we're going to start with angles. So let's go in alphabetical order. So we're going to start with J. J is 52. What's 52 on the other one? It's P. So angle J is congruent to angle P. Alright, 78, K. 78, M. So angle K is congruent to angle M, which leaves us with angle L is congruent to angle Q. Now we're going to do sides. I know that JK will be congruent to PM. I didn't have to look at my picture because I see JK here and PM here. Let me show you in the picture though. We have JK 39, PM 39. And I have to do an order. I cannot say MP because M and J are not the same. So I have to match up J and P and K and M. Next I'm going to go side KM is congruent to, oh that's wrong. Side KL is congruent to side MQ. And last but not least, we have LJ is congruent to side QP. So I'm just going to use my angles again, and I'm going to say triangle JKL is congruent to triangle PMQ. That's my congruent statement. Okay, now we have a little more challenging. Okay. Find the values of X and Y. Okay, so we have RSV is congruent to TVS. So what I like to do is I like to write them above each other. Okay, so let's look at, first of all, our angles. So R goes with T. So if T is X, that means R is also X. We're going to go with SV, that means this is a right angle, and VS, that means this angle over here is also 78. And then we can go with the sides. RS is congruent to TV. So if I look at that, TV is 24, RS is 2y minus 1. So what I can do then is do algebra, and I can find y plus 1, 2y equals 25, divide both sides by 2, y will equal 12.5. Okay, let's look at changing the color. And now we're going to look at VR is congruent to ST. So here's VR. That doesn't really matter, but then we will know that this is 24.5 over here because VR is congruent to ST. Okay, now it says to find X. Well, I have two angles. We know that all angles add up to 180. So I'm going to do 180 minus 90, because I have a 90-degree angle, minus 78. And if I do all that, I will get 12. So X equals 12 degrees. Okay, find the values of X and Y. All right, A is an angle. I'm going to write them on top of each other because that really helps. So I know that A goes with P. So 2x plus 4 equals 100. Now, why doesn't A go with R? A doesn't go with R because if we look over here, A and P are lined up. So they have to go together. In this picture that I'm going to circle in yellow is actually flipped over from ABCD. So PQRS is actually flipped over. Sometimes that's hard to see. So you got to follow your rules. And now we're going to subtract 4. 2x equals 96. Divide by 2, x equals 48. Okay? Now, let's think about finding y. Y is on this line. 3y minus 3 represents CD. So let's look at segment CD, and we can see that CD is congruent to RS. Now we look in the picture, and what's RS? It's up here. CD is not congruent to QP, even though the picture might look like it. So we'll change our colors here and do 3y minus 3 equals 12. Add 3, 3y equals 15. Divide by 3, y equals 5. So that's how you use your congruent statements. Use a little algebra, and you can find those answers. Okay, we have a third angle theorem, which basically says if I have two angles that are congruent to each other, then the third angle has to be congruent. So if we use numbers here, you'll see it's pretty apparent, right? If this is 50 and this is 60, that means this one's 50 and this one's 60. We do the math, that means this one has to be 70 and this one has to be 70. And we have one other slide here. Properties of triangle congruence. So we're going to be practicing with these more and more as time goes on. First one we have is called reflexive property. Reflexive property always has one, I'll say, we'll use triangles. Yeah. One triangle or object that it's talking about. Okay? So reflexive is ABC is congruent to ABC. Just like seeing yourself in the mirror, you see the same thing. Symmetric always deals with two triangles. And it's always flip-flopped. If triangle ABC is congruent to EFG, then EFG is congruent to ABC. Then the last one always will have three different triangles, and that's the transitive. So if ABC is congruent to EFG and EFG to JKL, then ABC is congruent to JKL. And what I do is I can literally just cross out the middle triangle, and you can see that ABC will be congruent to JKL. That's one way to think about it. Okay, so Make sure you know these three properties because we're going to be practicing those coming up in the next couple of units.